So I was at Thanksgiving dinner last year. You know how it goes. Turkey, mashed potatoes, and that one uncle who absolutely has to talk about money. He looks at me, fork in hand, and says, when I was your age, I already had a house, 2 cars, and your aunt was staying home with the kids. And I was making 40,000 a year. What's your excuse? And I just sat there, smiling, dying inside. Because here's the thing, I make over 100 grand, I work 60 hours a week, I have a master's degree, and I'm still renting a one-bedroom apartment with a roommate who leaves dishes in the sink for 3 days. If you clicked on this video, I'm guessing you've had a version of this conversation. Maybe it was your dad, maybe your mom, maybe it was some random guy on LinkedIn telling you to stop buying avocado toast. And every single time, there's this voice in your head that whispers, maybe they're right, maybe I'm just bad with money. Well, I'm here to tell you something important. That voice is wrong, and I can prove it with math. See, most people think the reason you're struggling is because you're spending too much, too many subscriptions, too much DoorDash, too many trips to Target where you went in for toothpaste and came out with a cart full of stuff you didn't know you needed. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Even if you cut all of that out, even if you lived like a monk, ate rice and beans, canceled Netflix, walked everywhere, you'd still be further behind than your parents were at your age. And it's not even close. This isn't about budgeting tips or telling you to make coffee at home. We're going way deeper than that. I'm going to show you exactly how the entire game changed while nobody was paying attention. Why the numbers your parents dealt with and the numbers you're dealing with look similar on paper, but represent completely different realities. Now, quick disclaimer here. Nothing in this video is financial advice. I'm not telling you what to invest in or where to put your money. This is about understanding the landscape, the big picture. Because you can't win a game if you don't even know the rules changed. I'm Dom, by the way, and if you've ever felt gaslit by older generations about money, this video is going to feel like therapy. Stick around until the end because I'm going to break down not just what happened, but what you can actually do about it. And honestly, if this kind of real talk about money is something you want more of, hit that subscribe button. Not for me, for you. Because understanding this stuff is the difference between feeling like a failure and realizing you've been playing on hard mode the whole time. All right, let's start with the basics. When your uncle says he made $40,000 in 1985, your brain automatically tries to translate that into today's money. And if you Google inflation calculator, it'll tell you that 40 grand in 1985 is about 115,000 today. So you think, okay, I make around that. We should be equal, right? Wrong. And here's why. That inflation calculator uses something called the CPI, Consumer Price Index. It's the government's official way of measuring how prices change over time. And on paper, it sounds legit. They track the prices of a bunch of stuff people buy and calculate the average increase. But here's the dirty little secret. The way they calculate CPI has changed dramatically since the 1980s. And every single change has made inflation look lower than it actually is. Let me give you an example. There's something called substitution bias. If the price of steak goes up too much, the government assumes you'll just buy chicken instead. So they swap steak for chicken in the calculation. Problem solved. Inflation is lower. But wait, did your quality of life stay the same? No, you wanted steak. Now you're eating chicken. That's not the same thing. There's also something called hedonic adjustment. Your phone costs $1,000 now, but it does more than a phone from 1985. So technically, the government says it's actually cheaper when you factor in all the extra features. But you still paid $1,000. Your bank account doesn't care about hedonic adjustments. If we measured inflation the same way we did in 1980, some economists estimate it would be running at 10 to 12% per year, not the 3% they keep telling us. So when your parents' 40,000 went way further than your 100,000, it's not because they were smarter. It's because the yardstick they're using to measure is broken. It's like measuring your health only by your weight. Technically, you might be fine, but meanwhile, your blood pressure is through the roof, and you can't walk up a flight of stairs without getting winded. The number says one thing, reality says another. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Housing. In 1985, the median home price in America was $89,000. The median household income was about $23,000. Do some quick math. That's a ratio of about 3.8, meaning the average house cost less than 4 years of the average salary. Fast forward to today. Median home price is over $400,000. Median income is around $59,000. That's a ratio of nearly 7 to 1. And in cities like San Francisco, New York, or LA, we're talking 12 to 15 times annual income. But here's where it gets really wild. Your parents needed a 20% down payment on an $89,000 house. That's about 18 grand. Less than 1 year of salary. They could save that in 2 years while living pretty normally. You need 20% down on a $400,000 house. That's $80,000. That's almost a year and a half of your entire salary before taxes, before rent, before food, before anything. And I know what you're thinking. But Dom, interest rates were like 12% back then. That's insane. Yeah, you're right. Rates were higher. But let's actually do the math instead of just repeating what we heard. A loan on an $89,000 house at 12% meant monthly payments of around $900. Compared to their income, that was aggressive but doable. A loan on a $400,000 house at 7% means monthly payments of nearly $2,800. That's 3 times more. And income only went up 2.5 times. So even with the higher rates, your parents' mortgage took a smaller bite out of their paycheck than yours does. And you can't escape it by renting either. Rent-to-income ratios have gone from about 25% in 1985 to over 40% today. Almost half your money, gone before you buy groceries. Here's an analogy that might help. Imagine if the price of a Big Mac increased at the same rate as housing. It would cost $47 today. Nobody would eat at McDonald's. We'd all agree that's insane. But when it's housing, somehow it's your fault for not figuring it out. Let's move on to education. This one makes me genuinely angry. In 1985, the average public university tuition was about $1,200 per year for the whole year. Total cost for a 4-year degree, around $5,000. Today, average public tuition is over $11,000 per year. 4-year degree costs you $44,000 minimum. And that's before room and board. That's an increase of over 800%. Meanwhile, overall inflation was only about 180%. But here's the thing that really kills me. In 1985, a student working a minimum wage job over summer break could earn about $1,300. That covered their tuition for the year. They could literally pay for college by working part-time. Today, that same summer job at minimum wage gets you maybe $2,900. That covers 26% of tuition. Not even close. Your parents could work their way through college. You literally cannot. The math doesn't work. And yet they still say, I worked for my education, why can't you? Because a summer job doesn't pay what college costs anymore. That's why. Total student debt in 1985 was around $10 billion. Today, it's $1.77 trillion. With a T, the average graduate starts life almost $40,000 in the hole. It's like if a bus ticket cost $2 in 1985 and now it costs $16, but the bus still takes you to the same place, and you're required to buy a ticket. There's no other option. You need the bus to get anywhere. That's what happened to college degrees. Now let's talk about something nobody wants to bring up at dinner parties. Healthcare. In 1985, the average family spent about $2,500 a year on healthcare. Insurance, doctor's visits, prescriptions, all of it. Today, that number is over $24,000. That's an increase of 860%. And here's the kicker. You're not even getting more for that money. Deductibles in 1985 averaged about $300. Today they average over $1,700. So you're paying $500 a month for insurance, and then you still have to pay the first $1,700 yourself before insurance kicks in. That's like paying for a gym membership where you still have to pay per class when you show up. 66% of bankruptcies in America are related to medical expenses. Let me say that again. 2/3 of people who go bankrupt do so because they got sick. This doesn't happen in Canada, doesn't happen in Germany, doesn't happen in Japan, doesn't happen in pretty much any other developed nation on earth. Your parents could get sick without getting bankrupt. That's a luxury we don't have anymore, and it affects everything. People stay in jobs they hate because they need the insurance. Entrepreneurs don't start businesses because individual coverage is insanely expensive. The whole system keeps you trapped. Your parents could take risks, you take a risk, and lose your health coverage. Okay, so we've covered housing, education, and healthcare, the big three. But there's something even deeper going on. Between 1948 and 1973, worker productivity in America increased by 97%, and wages increased by 91%. They moved together. You worked harder, you got paid more. Simple. But then something happened. From 1973 to today, productivity increased another 160%. But wages? Only 17%. Where did all that extra money go? I'll give you a hint. It didn't go to your paycheck. The top 1% owned 24% of all wealth in 1985. Today they own over 32%. The pie got bigger, your slice got smaller, and it's not just about money, it's about security. In 1985, 38% of workers had pensions, real pensions, where the company promised to pay you a certain amount when you retired, no matter what. Today, 15%, and falling. Instead, we got 401ks, which sounds good until you realize that means all the risk shifted from the company to you. Your parents had retirement guaranteed. You have an app and hope the market doesn't crash when you're 64. Think about it like Monopoly. Your parents started playing when the board was relatively empty. They could buy properties, build houses, and accumulate wealth over time. You entered the game 3 hours late. Every property already has a hotel on it. And when you complain, someone says, just play better. But you didn't start from the same place. That's not a fair comparison. So what do we do with all this information? First, and I need you to really hear this, stop blaming yourself. You're not bad with money. The game changed. Recognizing that isn't making excuses. It's the first step to actually navigating reality, instead of beating yourself up for not winning a game that was rigged before you started. Second, understand that you have to play differently than your parents did. They could buy a house, sit on it for 30 years, and build wealth passively. That path is closing for a lot of people. You might need multiple income streams. You might need to invest earlier and more aggressively. You might need to think about geographic arbitrage, living somewhere cheaper while working remotely. The game changed. Your strategy has to change too. Third, optimize ruthlessly on the things that matter. Housing, education, and healthcare are where the real money goes. Every decision you make in those 3 categories has a massive impact. Think hard about where you live. Think hard about whether that degree is worth the debt. Max out your HSA if you can. These aren't small optimizations. These are the things that actually move the needle. Fourth, understand that these aren't natural disasters. They're policy choices. Zoning laws that restrict housing supply. Student loan policies that allowed universities to raise prices endlessly. Healthcare lobbying that keeps the system broken. These are all things that were decided by people, and they can be undecided by people too. Voting matters. Advocacy matters. Don't just accept this as how things are. And fifth, build wealth differently. Your parents built equity in their house. That path might not work for you, but index funds exist. The ability to start businesses online exists. Skills you can stack and monetize exist. The roads are different, but the destination can still be the same if you adapt. Look, here's the bottom line. Your parents weren't smarter than you. They weren't more disciplined. They didn't work harder. The game was just easier, period. And once you understand that, everything changes. You stop feeling guilty for not having what they had at your age. You start seeing the actual landscape clearly. And you can make real decisions based on real information, instead of trying to follow a map to a world that doesn't exist anymore. You're playing on hard mode. That's not an excuse. That's context. And context is power. Now you know what you're actually up against. And that's the first step to winning anyway. I'll see you in the next one.